This is the DJI Pocket 3 and this is the Sony ZV-E1. And today I'm going to do a comparison about both these cameras, the pros, the cons, how they compare, how they do in low light, and which camera is best for you. Now, I'm not going to give a list of specs or anything like that, and I'm just going to kind of talk about the main differences a little bit. But first of all, just look at these cameras, look how they compare. This is way smaller. This is going to be a lot more to hold and carry around, but still, for a mirrorless camera, this is still really small, and the video quality that you get out of this is going to be pretty much top notch. This has a 1-inch sensor, and in my opinion, this could come really close to this camera when you're just doing day-to-day video and you're not really doing anything for low light. Now, what is the difference in sensor size? So if I have a dime and I was to cut this dime into a square shape, that's pretty much going to be the sensor size of the DJI Pocket. Now with a quarter, this is how tall the sensor is in the ZV-E1, but it's about 1.25 inches this way. So if you have a quarter and you add another 1/2 inch to it, that would be the sensor size of a full frame camera. So hopefully that gives you just a better idea of the size differences between these sensors. The full frame is obviously, I'm gonna say, 2 to 3 times larger than the 1-inch sensor in the DJI Pocket, because the 1-inch sensor is not a 1-inch sensor. It's actually more like a 1/2 inch on the long end. On the short end, it's actually about 0.3 inches. Now, my initial impressions with the DJI Pocket 3, I think this is a super easy to use camera. I'm still kind of figuring out the quirks a little bit. It's not completely intuitive because I'm not a gimbal user. I've never really used gimbals before. And just using it, I feel like it's nice. It's pretty easy to use overall, but a lot of times I'm missing focus, and it's almost because the screen size is too small. Now I know I can actually pair this to my iPhone and I can have a much larger screen, but it's hard to kind of carry around an iPhone and the DJI Pocket, and it's just like, why am I carrying these like 2 different devices? But if I'm like doing like a circular motion around an object, it seemed like a lot of times I would track the object. So if you like double click, it will track the object, but sometimes the tracking comes off, or maybe I go out of frame, and it seems like I go out of frame a lot with it because the screen size is so much smaller than my Sony ZV-E1. So that's just one thing that I kind of noticed right off the bat, that I was having a little bit harder time focusing on my subject. And it seems like with the ZV-E1, I just would put it on a tripod. I don't have a gimbal or anything like that, and it's just a lot easier to use. And that maybe it's just because I'm just not an experienced gimbal user. So we're gonna do a little test. So I've already used the DJI a little bit, and I've seen kind of the footage, but I haven't seen it up on like a big screen. So I can't give you like a really great honest comparison right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what I think the pros and cons are gonna be of this camera. And then I'm gonna go out in the field, I'm gonna get some footage, I'm gonna put it up on my computer screen, compare it side by side, look at the image quality, the dynamic range, look at the full picture here, and give you a better comparison. So here is my comparison on the pros and cons without looking the full footage, and this is what I think about it. If you're shooting at sunset or right after sunset, that's where I feel like the ZV-E1 is probably going to be the better camera to get. You're not going to notice as much noise that you'll notice in the Pocket 3. And I just think mirrorless camera just does a lot better job. But the problem is that this camera is about $2,000, whereas this one is only $600, and it comes with a lens. So $2,000 plus whatever, this is an $800 lens on top of it. So that ends up being close to $3,000 versus a small $600 camera. I've used my iPhone. The iPhone is great, but the iPhone doesn't have a gimbal, and the iPhone doesn't have a 1-inch sensor. And the fact that I can easily fit this in my pocket, just about as good as the iPhone. It's a little bit fatter, but you can still fit it in your pocket with this case. It goes on just like this. You can just fit it in your pocket, take it with you wherever you go. It's not as convenient as an iPhone, but you can get much better stabilized footage. You can get that D-Log, which you can also get in the iPhone right now, but you get the 1-inch sensor, which in my opinion is gonna be a lot better than the iPhone. So here's some different footage between the DJI and the ZV-E1. I'm just gonna go ahead and roll some of that footage so you can see the differences and pay attention to the noise as you kind of see this comparison, and also the sharpness and image quality that you get out of each. All right, so this is the new Brevity backpack, and as I do this comparison, listen to the audio too. So this is on the ZV-E1. This is the audio coming out of the Rode Wireless Go 2, and I'm gonna also use the same microphone with the Pocket 3. But look at the quality here. I mean, it does really well with the autofocus on the ZV-E1, and the quality here, I mean, you can just see all the individual details down here. I think it looks really good. Also, I'm shooting at, right now here, let's see, I'm shooting at f2.8, so I'm gonna get a pretty nice background blur here. You can see the outlet here. I got a little plant box over there. And that is kind of what the bokeh is gonna look like. If I get really close, the bokeh is gonna get a lot better. If I focus in on that Brevity logo, the bokeh in the background is gonna look good, really good. Here is 1.8, so even more bokeh, and then here is 5.6, and here is f8. These are on the regular standard picture profiles on the ZV-E1, and this is just the audio kind of coming out of my voice. This is how I sound, and let's compare that now with the DJI Pocket 3. Okay, now here is the same backpack with the DJI Pocket 3, and as I get closer here, you can see the quality as it compares to the ZV-E1. It looks a little bit brighter on the ZV-E1, but the ZV-E1 also has a 1.8 aperture, and I am indoors, but there is a light in this room. Look at the bokeh comparison between the background. I mean, this looks, I would say, more like an f5.6 or f8 on the ZV-E1. So I would say that bokeh, not quite as good, but nevertheless, we still have some bokeh, which is pretty nice. So there's the backpack. Here's the quality. I'm gonna look it up on my computer and see kind of how it compares to kind of give you a better idea of what that quality looks like. You can see the threading in here pretty well, but I would still say it's a little bit better on the ZV-E1. Okay, now I just increased the exposure a couple notches, and now it's just a little bit brighter, so maybe that might give you just a little better comparison of how the quality looks here between the ZV-E1 and the DJI Pocket. And this is the audio coming out too right now, so listen for my audio. How does that sound compared to the ZV-E1? Is it about the same? Is it different? Audio levels are about the same here on both cameras, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better on the ZV-E1, but I don't know if you're gonna notice a huge comparison, but it is cool that you can use the Rode Wireless Go on both these cameras. This is my receiver that I'm using right now. I have to plug it in via USB-C to the Pocket 3 so I can get audio out of my wireless microphone. Now, in terms of audio quality, I thought that the audio quality was about the same on each one. I didn't really notice a major difference. You guys can tell me what you think, but I would say that the audio quality is pretty neck and neck. And if you have the Rode Wireless Go 2, which is what I was using, I would say it would be completely fine. You just have to worry about having a cord hang out and having a receiver. Now, something I want you to be aware of is if you look at the color, the skin tones on the Pocket 3 are a lot worse than the ZV-E1. If you're just gonna use the standard picture profiles, the color like straight out of the box on the DJI one is gonna be slightly worse, but it's not something that I would say is a big deal because of what you can do with 10-bit video and when you're doing color grading. So now I'm gonna take both these cameras outside. I'm just gonna check the quality. This is with active stabilization, and then here's the DJI Pocket, and this is just with the gimbal at 24p. This is stabilization with the ZV-E1, and I'm just walking down the street. This is at 60 frames per second, and this footage is at 24 frames per second, and again with the Pocket 3. The DJI does a lot better with dynamic range. The ZV-E1, not so great. Now, obviously, the DJI is way lighter, but with the Samyang lens on the ZV-E1, I mean, it's pretty like it's pretty much like I'm not holding a whole lot, and I'm guessing the exposure is just going to be way better. Here is log footage with the same Brevity backpack, and we're just going to compare the colors here to see if they're any different. I can't tell right now. Here's log footage on the DJI Pocket, and I think the colors starting to look a little bit better. And this is just straight out of the log footage without any color profiles. Side-by-side comparison, both in log footage, I like the DJI a little better. And here they're both color corrected. And I would say not seeing a huge difference here. I think they both look great. It just really depends on how your color correction goes. All right, so just to wrap this up here, do I think that the DJI Pocket 3 is an alternative to the ZV-E1? I would say, I mean, for the most part, no, right? So it's never going to have that low light sensor. It's never going to have as big of a sensor. And I think that the Pocket 3 in many cases is a lot better just because you're a lot more mobile in it. You can use it anywhere. It's just a lot easier to take out and film yourself. But I think it also has some limitations with it. It's never going to have the low light performance of the ZV-E1, and it's kind of like a mini mirrorless camera, but it's not completely there. Now, if you're just doing YouTube videos, I think you can definitely use it to replace your ZV-E1. I think in a lot of circumstances, you can use this camera. And I'll be honest with you guys, like I am definitely considering just selling my ZV-E1 and replacing it with the DJI Pocket. I'm not 100% there yet. I'm gonna probably keep the ZV-E1 for probably another year and just kind of see how I like filming with the Pocket 3. I know there's definitely going to be some situations where I want more manual capabilities, and with having a lens where you can easily change the aperture, that's kind of why I gravitate to mirrorless cameras. And it's not going to be as easy to do on the Pocket 3 with a fixed aperture. And the Pocket 3 is small, light, and portable, but so is the ZV-E1. I'm actually holding the ZV-E1 right now, and it's really not that heavy. Would I rather have a gimbal? Yeah, that would be a whole lot easier. For gimbal performance, the DJI definitely wins. It's the clear winner for stabilization, but not by that much because the stabilization in the ZV-E1 is pretty good. Now, when it comes to log footage, the ZV-E1 I think is gonna like be supreme there, but I actually really like the log footage straight out of the DJI without any correction. It has a nice flat effect to it that I actually prefer. Whether or not I'm going to use that in the future, I'm not sure, but I kind of like how it looks straight out of just using D-Log. And when it comes to cost, it's really nice to have something much more affordable as my second camera. And the thing is, I'm trying to use it as a second camera, so I don't really see a huge need for the ZV-E1, and that's why I think that the Pocket 3 could replace your second mirrorless camera. If you have just one mirrorless camera, I would say stick with that. If you need a second camera, I think the Pocket 3 is a great alternative. And the other day, I took both these cameras outside in the dark, and the Pocket 3 was just destroyed compared to the ZV-E1. I think the ZV-E1 does a way better job when it comes to anything low light. Right now, I have it in low light mode, so this is as light as you're gonna pretty much get it with the DJI Pocket. With the Sony ZV-E1, right now I'm shooting on the 12mm Samyang, and this is an f2. And this is pretty much as bright as you're gonna get at about f2. If it's absolute darkness, if it's completely dark, none of these cameras are really gonna win. Now, if you are doing most of your footage or just a large amount of footage in low light conditions, it's a no-brainer to get the ZV-E1. I don't think the Pocket really stands a chance. That half-inch sensor, it says it's 1 inch, it's really a half-inch sensor, is not gonna really compete with a sensor that's 3 times the size. Now at this point, I'm not going to switch over because I still like the bokeh on the Sony ZV-E1 with all my lenses, but it's very compelling to switch over, and I'm definitely considering it, but I'm going to wait. That's another issue for me. It's just I'm used to the regular mirrorless camera, but will I change my mind? Possibly. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching and commenting and liking, and please subscribe if you can. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.